Welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show. Coming up this week, the insane power needed to win World Tour level sprints. I'll take a deep dive into Paul Magnier's 5-stage win at the Tour of Guangxi, and it really is eye-watering. I'll also wrap up the final road races of the 2025 season and the first top-level cyclocross race as well. This week in the world of racing, we learnt that Cofidis have been unofficially relegated from the World Tour, whilst UnoX have been promoted into it. The two teams have been locking horns in many end-of-season races in a fierce battle for points, but it was the Norwegian squad who came out on top, and I bet they didn't expect that at the start of 2025. We also learnt that the merger of Intermarché and Lotto has been confirmed, but it's been pretty messy. Many riders and staff weren't told officially until very late, leading many to say that the UCI should enforce an earlier deadline for these things to allow everyone enough time to find themselves a new job. There are going to be a lot of people without one next year, with this confirmation coming so late in the season. And finally, we learned that Paul Magnier of Soudal Quickstep almost caught Tadej Pogacar as the man with the most pro wins in 2025. Magnier won all 5 bunt sprints at the Tour of Guangxi, taking his season tally to 19, one short of Poggi. Amazingly, 14 of them came in the last 36 days of his season. And not 36 days of racing, just 36 days. The Tour of Guangxi in China was the final World Tour race of the men's season. And no, it wasn't the best field of sprinters, but as I've said in previous weeks, it's not easy to win these races, let alone so prolifically as Magnier has been doing. Jordi Meijers and Phil Bauhaus were also there, no stranger to success at the top level of the sport themselves. Anyway, rather than do a deep dive on each stage and how it was won, I thought I'd take a closer look at Paul Magnier's power files for each win, because they all look very different, but are impressive in their own way. So stage 1 was relatively easy overall. Magnier had a normalised power of 265 watts for around 3.5 hours. From the last corner of the race, it was an effort of 1 minute 47 seconds to get to the finish, and for that duration, his average power was 605 watts. But obviously it's not a steady 600 watts, it gradually ramps up. His peak 1 minute was the final minute of the stage, 747 watts. His peak 30 seconds was also at the end, and that was just over 1,000 watts. And when he kicked for the line, he hit out at over 1,600 watts, which is more than enough to beat everybody else. On stage 2, his numbers were a little less, 739 watts for the final minute, 908 for 30 seconds, and a peak power of 1,565 watts, and a peak 5 seconds of 1,434. More of the same on stage 3, where the final corner came with just under a minute of racing remaining. For the final straight there, he averaged 829 watts for 46 seconds, with a peak of 1,636. That day he maintained an average power of over 1,000 watts for the final 21 seconds of the stage. Really impressive. Now in terms of the sprint stages, day 4 was amongst the hardest overall. Over 4 hours at almost 300 watts normalised power. And what made this one interesting was that Magnier never got out of the saddle in the sprint to the line. That was because of the incredibly high speeds that day. So for the final 10 minutes of that stage, they averaged 62 kilometres per hour and very close to 70 km per hour in the final 30 seconds of it. His in the saddle power, impressive again. Over 1,400 watts when he kicked in the saddle, 1,230 watts for the final 15 seconds, and 947 for 30, and 759 for the final minute. His best 1 minute effort of the week actually, and all done in the saddle as I remind you. Now most top pro riders would be extremely happy with those numbers, even when they got out of the saddle, let alone stuck in it. As others have said online, get Paul Magnier into the velodrome. And the final day of racing was another tough one, to the point where some wondered whether he'd be in the mix for the final sprint to the line at all. His normalised power that day was 324 watts for a little under 3 hours, but it didn't make his sprint power any less impressive. Once again, he hit out at over 1,600 watts, this time out of the saddle, maintaining over 1,300 watts for the final 15 seconds, and very close to 1,000 watts for the final half a minute. The final minute of the stage was 750 watts. It was his longer duration power though that also stood out that day. So his peak 5 minutes came on the lead into and over the last climb of the day, 480 watts average. And for context, Magnier is listed as 70 kilograms, so not that big for a sprinter. And to be fair, he is a lot more than just a sprinter. But nevertheless, it goes to show what goes into being one of the world's best sprinters. It's not just about the numbers in the final minute or final 10 seconds, it's about what you've got to do to get there in the first place. That 5 minutes at 480 watts came in the final 15 minutes of racing, so you then had to recover from that and then hit out for the line at over 1600 watts, having already fought to be in the right position at the right time to even be in with a chance of winning the stage. Now there's a hell of a lot beyond the raw data and raw power numbers that goes into winning professional level bunch sprints. Positioning, timing, bike handling, spatial awareness, etc. The numbers sure help, but you need to be the complete package to win. And that's exactly what Paul Magnier is, the complete package. I'm already looking forward to seeing what he achieves next season, particularly actually in the classics. I think there are a few where he'll be right up there in the mix, just as he was at Omloop Het Nieuwsblad back in February of this year. Now Magnier did not win the overall classification, but Handley, the man who did, also uploaded his files to Strava with power included. That man was Paul Double of Jaco Alula, who's really had a breakthrough season in 2025. Now he is listed on Pro Cycling Stats at 56 kilograms, very light even by climbers' standards. With that in mind, the numbers I'm about to quote are even more impressive. So the climb to the finish of stage 5 is quite punchy, around 10 minutes in duration, and for that duration, Double averaged 413 watts or 7.4 watts per kilogram. Like Magnier though, some of his peak powers came on the lead up to the finish line, so he had 426 watts for the final 5 minutes of that stage. His peak minute came when he attacked though. There he held 470 watts for that duration and 494 for 30 seconds. And that was enough to distance everyone. Victor Lafay of Decathlon rolled across the line 9 seconds after Double in second place, whilst Mikel Honoré of EF took third. Courtesy of bonus seconds though, Jonathan Narvaez of UAE took third in the GC in the end. So the first ever World Tour stage race to be dominated by Pauls. Well done Mrs Double and Magnier. Meanwhile, at the Women's Tour of Guangxi, which is a one-day race, Anna Henderson took the honours. She got away with Liverlula Jayco's Caroline Anderson, getting the better of her in the sprint to the line. That was Henderson's second win of the season, having already taken a stage win of the Giro Donne. There was a win for Uno X in the final race of their season, the Veneto Classic on Sunday, one which effectively sealed the deal on their promotion to the World Tour. And it was the first win in the career of 24-year-old Zacharias Koller-Lalande. He outsprinted newly crowned world gravel champion Florian Vermeersch and experienced veteran Diego Ulissi. So not a bad couple of names to beat in your maiden victory as a pro. Earlier in the week, Uno X had picked up more valuable UCI points with Jonas Abrahamsen at the Giro del Veneto. He won the group sprint there for third place, behind UAE teammates Isaac Del Toro and Pavel Sivakov. And for Del Toro, it was his 16th win of the season, 7 of which came in one-day semi-classics in Italy. Now if that lad improves again in the next year or two, it is not going to be good news for anybody else. In the women's race, Sylvia Persico soloed to the win, around half a minute clear of Marlon Reusser. Josh Tarling and Ellen van Dijk won the Chrono des Nations at the weekend in France. Tarling put around half a minute into second place J-Vine, but it was much closer for Van Dijk. She won by a single second over Alessia Vigilia of FDJ Suez. And it means that Van Dijk bows out of the sport on a high, with what was her 42nd individual time trial win. So huge congratulations to her. And just finally, congrats to Lenny Martinez of Bahrain Victorious, who won his final race of the season, the Japan Cup. He finished over half a minute in front of fellow Frenchman Alex Baudin of EF. So it's off-season time now for all pro road riders. Very well deserved too. Feels like the season gets longer every year, doesn't it? And it's only about 12 weeks now until the Tour Down Under 2026. Don't forget you can catch a full season of bike racing live on Discovery Plus or Max, including a full season of Cyclocross, which is now in full swing. Speaking of which, great segue there, yesterday was the first round of the Superprestige series. The men's race was a very close affair, with the top 10 separated by just 20 seconds at the finish line. Michael van Turenhout took things up relatively early on the final lap, and his job was made slightly easier when Toon Arts crashed on the final corner. Still wasn't an easy win though. He just got the better of Joris Nieuwenhuis, who was one of just 2 non-Belgians in the top 11, the other being Kevin Coyne in 5th. In the women's, it was the Belgian champion who took the spoils, not Sanne Cant, who is now retired, but rather the pretender to the throne, who's now on the throne, Marie Norbert Ribeyrolles. She attacked with 2 laps remaining, holding off Casasola, who took 2nd, and Fouquenet in 3rd. Love that name, Fouquenet. Incidentally, I can't remember the last time there wasn't a Dutch rider on the podium at such a major women's cyclocross race, although I have to admit I haven't done much research on that. They had to set up a 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th on the day. The biggest name at the start line, world champion Fem van Empel, was 6th. Just before I move on to transfer news, congratulations to Sofia Gomez Villafane, who cemented the overall win in the Lifetime Grand Prix Series in the US with a win in the final round, which was big sugar, albeit shortened. Matt Beers won the men's race, whilst the overall series on that side went to Cam Rogers, who's really made a name for himself this year. Rogers started big sugar, just 1 point behind Keegan Swenson, but finished ahead of him in the group, going for 5th place on the day, and courtesy of that took the overall series. Okay, transfer news now, and I'll start with Ryan Mullen, who's moving away from Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe and over to the team formerly known as Israel Premier Tech. He goes there on a 2-year deal. Alexander Kamp is one of the riders from Intermarché Womty who has found a new home already. He goes to Uno X. Likewise, Christian Rodriguez jumped the sinking ship that was Arkea B&B Hotels, and he's going to move to XDS Astana. Matteo Sobrero will be a Lidl Trek rider as of January the 1st after 2 years at Red Bull, who themselves have signed Jared Drisners from Lotto. Meanwhile, on the women's side, the biggest transfer last week was that of Mavi Garcia. The bronze medalist from the recent World Championships will hook up with Elisa Longo Borghini at UAE ADQ in what is going to be her last season as a pro rider. Garcia turns 42 this coming January. She turned pro relatively late after switching from duathlon and triathlon, but what a career she's had over the past decade or so. Right, that is all for another week on the GCN Racing News Show. And next week we'll be wrapping up all the latest cyclocross results and all the other big news in pro racing. See you then.